So welcome to the very crowded book club today. Today, we're going to rename it. It's going to be the Michael and Marilyn get a moment to actually talk to each other,
It's so
not
nice to
on
see you.
not on Messenger.
Well, I have a question. Tell me more, especially since he may speak at Zorkfest, about the guy who wrote this book. He's obviously brilliant.
Right. We're not supposed to say might speak at Zorkfest. We don't know who might be speaking at
Oh,
Zorkfest. Well, this will be a great test to see if anyone actually watches.
but you put it in the invite in the save the dates.
No. Nothing is on. If you go to the Zorkfest landing page, you'll see that nothing is on there. We should do like a little Zorkfest promotion, right? I should bring up
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
yeah,
But I'll just keep my mouth shut then.
that's actually probably a decent thing to bring up. That's actually not a bad idea. So that I could do that. Of course, I wasn't ready to do a screen share. Give me 1 second and let me bring up this. Wow, you're making this more technical for me. I was
I'm
ready for what I
sorry.
was.
Where's
No,
Mr.
that
Leo? I want to see Mr. Leo. I thought he'd be there with you.
yeah, it's right behind me. Wait,
Oh, okay. Now I feel better. I like to see Mr. Leo.
that's good. I enjoy it. It's very chill actually, just having you here. So I mean that's. But let's see. Yes, maybe one or two other people will join. So we can look really quickly at Zorkfest. Just before anyone gets here. So that's a okay. We're sharing Zorkfest.
Love it. Love
Can
it.
you see it? Is it
Yeah.
working? So,
Yeah.
for those who do not know, Zorkfest is a travel and casino loyalty event, but it's also going to have a lot of great gambling and speakers and social things. And we give a little bit of an overview of what's going on Zorkfest here. And as you can see, we haven't really told. We said a stalwart Vegas historian will serve as our opening speaker, so we haven't exactly
Oh, all
decided who
right.
that is yet. Okay, you're just too much in the know,
I guess I
Marilyn.
won't talk about Zorkfest at all.
Yeah, but anyway, Zorkfest is planned. It is a save the date now, so that doesn't mean it's 100%, but it's pretty close to happening, and many people are booking their airfare already, even though
That's a little premature, even for me.
it's probably a little premature, but
Yeah,
I do tell people to please go to the Zorkfest website and read all about it. Come to the Facebook group, and you can find out all kinds of things about it. But I think there's a lot of information there. But I'm not going to use this as that. But it's great, and I love our image. And if you
well, I
notice,
do.
the dice are actual dice. These dice right here are actual Crap Vegas dice that Duffy and Chris sent out to their Patreon
Aw.
people. And I took those dice and we silhouetted them and we set them up so they look like a hard eight.
Well, now you need to put like your face and Duffy's face and Jen's face and
No, I don't think we want to do that. But the funny thing about it is my artist originally put dice in there, which were decent, but they weren't positioned perfectly.
oh,
Like what's on it. You got a 6 here, and you got a 4 over here. So they're like, oh, so basically it took 10 minutes to put together the graphic and about 4 days for us to get the dice approval from everybody. Usual story of my life. They're like, but the dice have to be perfect. I was like, okay, I guess the dice have to be perfect. So the dice are definitely perfect. I'm glad you have your wine. I have my Pellegrino. So
I
this is
have to
good.
have
This
my
is a
wine.
nice. This is like our. I think that's what we're doing. Just gonna change this to Michael and Marilyn talk about whatever the fuck they want to.
I
Okay.
like this idea.
Hello, YouTube world. That's all we're doing. We just talk about Michael and Marilyn. Just talk about whatever we want to talk about, and that's just the way. That's just the way it is. So that's. So anyway, let's just jump into it for a second so that we'll show again the book, which is Suburban Xanadu. I absolutely love that name. I love the image on the cover of the book. and we're just going to jump into that for a moment. We're not talk too long, but there are a couple of pretty big ideas in this book, and we would like to cover those a little bit. So, Marilyn, if we said this entire concept, uh, I guess this is my favorite line of how you describe things. Las Vegas in the 1950s and 60s was brilliantly marketed as a safe vacation adventure for middle Americans trapped within everyday lives of conservatism and conformity. So this whole rise of the casino and what Las Vegas is. Do you agree with that? What's your thought? What really gripped you about? Like, did that really grip you? Did you ever actually have you ever thought about that before?
It did grip me because I think that it's very true. I would say I agree with that statement. I think that many people, and not just specifically gamblers, quote unquote, but many people go about and they live their lives, and we all have responsibilities, and whether that be careers or families or bills or whatever. And Las Vegas is the ultimate escape. You can be whoever what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You escape all of those day-to-day responsibilities and commitments in search of just fun and relaxation and the ability to escape from all those conformities and just become whoever you want to be for those few
But
days.
how about also that concept that it's not just escaping, the escape of Las Vegas, but you're also gambling in a setting that might be more similar to the way your lifestyle is, like resort this whole idea of this resort gambling place. Because when you think about the concept of that there weren't many places to gamble outside of Nevada, if you did gamble somewhere outside of Nevada, basically you were gambling illegally, or you were somewhere that wasn't comfortable, right? You were doing something illegal. So this whole idea that the setting, like the whole gambling setting, is more like your suburban lifestyle. And you've got this, I guess, the rise of the suburbs from the 1950s, and what people are comfortable with. And I think last time when we were talking about Super Casino also, I mean, it is hard today in 2023 to even grasp this concept that you could barely gamble anywhere, say in the
Mhm.
1960s. So, I mean, I think that's you know, a pretty strong thesis there about, how Las Vegas was being marketed. And also, I think what the way people looked at gambling in the 1950s. I mean, we could even argue the way people looked at gambling 20 years ago or 30 years ago in comparison to the way people view gambling today. Do you think that there's like how do you see that?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I think just to backtrack a little, like to what you said about it being a comfortable environment, an environment that that you're comfortable in, as opposed to feeling like you're in some back room alley rolling dice, afraid that, the police are going to come busting through the door at any moment, obviously made it more attractive and easier for people. Um, I think that gambling is looked at differently now. I think because, that whole theme of the book about it just being more than just the gambling, right? You had the shows and the food and, all of that other stuff that was going around surrounding the gambling. And I think that concept is more accepted today. Um, that it's not just gambling isn't just about gambling, it's about the environment. It's about the social aspect. It's not just rolling dice in some dark alley or playing, poker in some smoke infested, room with only men. I think the whole concept of gambling is different in what it encompasses for people now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then also now we have this other interesting thing, because with the rise of gambling, most people have a casino within a few hours of their home. So then this becomes this question of why is Las Vegas still compelling? Why would be? And that's, in addition to all of these other casino resort areas, but why would Las Vegas still be compelling for somebody? And I know you mentioned some of that, but that's an interesting I think that's a really interesting discussion also. Like, why do you still want to go to Las Vegas? Even, I mean, you're a bad example, right? Because you're in New Jersey, so you were very fortunate, or people in New Jersey were very fortunate to have casinos in 1979, which is way earlier than a lot of other than Pennsylvania or Delaware or a lot of
I was
other
way too young to
jurisdictions.
gamble in 1979.
Yes, I know, and so I know, but I'm just, but
Just
but
to
I'm
clarify.
just saying, people now, now back then you didn't have much of a choice where you could go to gamble. But I think it's sort of interesting when you think about it.
Well, I did, and I think even still today, so like you just said, right? I can get in the car and be in Atlantic City in 2 hours. And I do that often, too often. But it's nothing like like going to Las Vegas. It's just not. Even though there's, casinos and there's gambling and there's concerts and there's nothing. I think Las Vegas is the greatest city in the world. I don't care what anybody says. There's nothing like landing in Las Vegas.
Okay, no, that's absolutely true. Here's an interesting. This is a passage that I really liked, and I was able to find it, though I try to save things. Better than staying at home. If people do enjoy casino gaming, is it not for any easily quantifiable motivation? Individuals are drawn to casinos for a variety of contradictory reasons. Hope and despair, excitement and boredom equally draws patrons into casinos. On the surface, most patrons claim to enjoy their trips to the casino. Their gambling losses are rationalized as the cost of a day's or a weekend's diversion. For some, the 9 to 5 world of time cards, computer consoles, and fluorescent eye strain does not offer enough excitement. The action in a casino gives these patrons their needed doses of adrenaline. An entire cohort of retirees shows up at a casino for the sheer lack of other diversions. For others, a trip to the casino brings much needed social contact. Whatever the individual motivations, casino marketers agree that it is wisest to sell the casino experience as one that promises fun, not profit. People, for the most part, do not go to casinos to get rich. They fly, drive, and bust themselves there to have a good time. And I think that we pretty much all agree with that, right? I mean, I love the rationalization, the entertainment rationalization element, right? Because we all do that because everything is very expensive, especially today. So gambling per se is not really that much more expensive than other things. I mean, would you like? Is that something that you think about? Do you rationalize gambling as something that's entertaining for you?
Oh, absolutely. Um, I think, very few people gamble or go to Vegas or, anywhere to feel like because they think they're going to get rich, for profit. You're really going for the social aspect, or I think most people are. Um, I think of my mother, years ago, so she was divorced. I still lived home then I was young. And she worked, and the bank she worked for used to do bus trips. They would charter a bus and they'd all go to Atlantic City. And it was all about the social aspect. These, older women would take, $50, which, back then when there was a lot of money, or maybe $100, to play with just for the fun, just for the excitement. And if they came home with that same money, well, then life was even better. Um, and I think we all say the same thing. Yeah, I lost X number of dollars gambling, but I had a hotel for 4 nights and I had, a delicious meal that I didn't have to pay for. So everybody justifies it. I mean, that's the gambler in everybody, I think.
Yeah, and maybe going away from the original thesis, the thing that is so interesting that you hit on, but which is huge, is why people keep coming back to Las Vegas, right? Even though they have casinos near them, why Las Vegas is so different, and that's such an interesting that's such an interesting thing because that's even changed, over time, the way Las Vegas is. And also now how Las Vegas is so centered around sports, right? And how
Mhm.
that's actually sort of pricing
Yeah.
out a lot of people because of the sports, which
Right.
is like a whole new generation. Like when this book was written, that wasn't even a dream, what's going on now with all the professional sports in Las Vegas. So it's so interesting. And then there's another thing which we barely thought about conceptually 10 years ago happening is the online gaming and online gambling, especially like you're in a state like New Jersey, that has huge amounts of online gambling, which was like a dream. It was a if we want to think that the original growth of casinos was sort of like amazing, what happened between like Nevada, then to New Jersey, and then everything else when it exploded. Think now, like how even crazier it is with all of this online gaming and sports betting everywhere. Like, who would have ever dreamed that would have finally? I mean, it makes perfect sense, but
Mhm.
it's like a whole new world.
But I know what my opinion is, but do you think the advent of all of that, of the online gaming and the sports betting online and all that, is detracting from people going to Vegas or going anywhere for that matter because they can do it from their couch?
Well, I think what's interesting is that it probably detracts less from Vegas because so many things are driving people to go to Las Vegas,
Mhm.
not just the gambling. But I think it does definitely have an interesting impact on the casinos in a place like New Jersey. But what's also so interesting about it, which makes it muddy, is the casinos in New Jersey are the ones who are running the online gambling too. So now when they're giving their financial figures, it includes the online gambling. So it's a very interesting thing. I mean, not to get off on a tangent, but since nobody else came today with us, we can get off on whatever
We can talk
tangents
about
we
whatever
want.
we want.
I mean, the big question now is when big casino resort gambling comes to New York City. That's going to be really, really interesting what that's going to do to Atlantic City. Will that be like the nail in the coffin for a few more casinos in Atlantic City, or will it not be? And I think that's sort of interesting because New York City is getting casinos. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's also something I've never dreamed. I've never really it doesn't really hit you like it hits me in Boston with Encore Boston Harbor how close it is to the city, but this whole Manhattan thing is even it's like right there, right? Whether it's Times Square, whether it's the Saks building, right, or what? I mean, that's like
It's crazy.
it's crazy.
Look, I don't know. Because part of, like, I think they kind of alluded to in the book, especially like in the beginning, in the earlier times about, these casinos really being self-contained resorts, right? You never had to leave and all of that. And I guess it all depends on what this looks like in New York City.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
it's
know because I just like I think about myself. I mean, that's where I am every day, right? I'm in Midtown Manhattan. Am I gonna, go to the casino on a Tuesday night after work? Probably not. I hope not. But probably not.
yeah,
Um,
no, that does become a very, very interesting kind of thing. I mean, like, I think, when you look at these suburban, and Atlantic City is sort of like a casino resort. It's not Las Vegas, in a lot of people's
right.
minds, but it's a lot different than a lot of locals casinos and a lot of markets. I mean, the New York area is a lousy example because the locals casinos are so great. Like Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods and Atlantic City. You
Yeah.
could call them locals casinos, but they're pretty massive. They're pretty massive complexes. So I mean, that's an interesting kind of thing to think about.
I
But I
think
don't I don't know.
I think the casinos in New York City will benefit from the tourists that are already in New York City, that have come from all over the world to go to Broadway or, for whatever reason brought them to New York City. the idea that then they could spend a night at a casino, I'm sure will be very attractive, but it's not a gambling destination. One casino is not going to make it a gambling destination. Nobody's going to come there to gamble specifically.
That's an interesting way to look at it. That is interesting. So what do you think about, what's so interesting about, the book, the whole thesis of like Vegas being the safe vacation adventure for middle Americans, trapped in their ordinary lives, their conforming lives. But it is interesting today. We're not really that way, right? I mean, or are we? I guess when you think about it, obviously life in the 1950s and 60s was much different, but overall, America tends to be a pretty puritanical country if you think about it. So maybe it isn't. Maybe it actually is more relative today than we could believe. But I don't know. What do you think about that? I don't know, Americans are pretty prudish in comparison to most of the world.
But not, I think that's changed a lot since the 1950s or 60s to now. I think I really liked the concept that, nobody wants a casino in their backyard, but everybody wants to go to a casino. Right? They want it to be a vacation. They don't want it to be that they're driving, past it on their way to drop off their children at school. And maybe because it is still viewed as kind of a hedonistic pleasure, so to speak.
No, it is true. It is an interesting kind of, it's definitely interesting to, it's definitely interesting to think about. I think it's definitely something that you do think about that way, or that, like, not in my backyard, but now it is sort of in everybody's backyard. So that's interesting. It's all very interesting. And who would ever be able to predict a lot of what happened? I always say, like, I'm amazed at how Las Vegas reinvents itself all the time. Like, who would
Mhm.
ever be able to predict that kind of stuff? Like what's happened with Vegas. But it's amazing on the other end of it. It seems that Atlantic City doesn't reinvent itself so well. So,
Oh,
that's like, it is sort of interesting. Like, what causes that? Are there just smarter people in Las Vegas,
I
or
don't know.
political corruption too?
Well, yeah, but I don't even think the political corruption is that much of the reason for that. Like he towards the end, he talked about, and I don't remember the numbers, but like how such a large percentage of the revenues in Vegas casinos come from the ancillary services, come from the shows, come from the clubs,
Mhm.
come from the restaurants, and how it's like 1/5, I think, of the revenues in Atlantic City come from that. And I think that's slowly starting to change with the advent of like places like Hard Rock, that's got big name entertainment, Ocean that's got these big name, DJs and stuff at their clubs. So I think they're trying to make that percentage increase. But right now it's, they're giving away half the hotel rooms as comps to gamblers. And there's just not that much to do.
Well, and that's honestly now exactly what you're saying there is so interesting. And gaming, people didn't realize for a long time that the revenues for Atlantic City exceeded the casino gaming revenues exceeded the casino gaming revenues, not in the state of Nevada, but on the strip.
Yeah, I was
So
shocked.
that was, yeah, that's a shocking thing to think about, but it makes total sense, because Atlantic City, and we've mentioned this many times before, 1979, only places you could gamble were Atlantic City, New Jersey, Caribbean, and Nevada. Atlantic City, New Jersey. Wow, you've got Washington, D.C., you've got New York City, you've got Boston. Look at all of these places where people, that it draws from. It was a brilliant monopoly of the entire area, if you think about it.
Yeah.
So but now, and you're starting to hear this from people now, they're feeling, people feel like they're being priced out of Vegas. And in all of the evolution of Vegas, I don't think I've ever heard people. I mean, you always heard, bitching and moaning about resort fees and,
Right.
you don't have the $1.99, steak and eggs and things like that, or the $5.99 buffet. So there are always people complaining that Vegas is getting more expensive. But I think there's a differentiation between Vegas getting more expensive and people feeling that they're really starting to get priced out of the strip. Like it's just getting too expensive. For those who don't have enough gambling to get comp
Right.
rooms and other things, when you look at the ADRs, when you look at that, like Caesars, this last quarter had 90% occupancy, I think was the number at their properties. So the ADRs are higher than they've ever been. And I think for the average person who is not, we're talking someone who comes to Vegas with maybe gambles $200 and
Right.
pays for all their hotel rooms and pays for all of their food, that they're truly starting to get priced out. And especially when you look at some things like F1, I mean, which are
Well,
crazy.
that's what you said it before. You've got, it's becoming a sports mecca now. So, you've got a whole new group of people who maybe never would have come to Vegas or, weren't interested, who are now very interested and are willing to pay, to go see, a football game or F1 or the match at Wynn or the Super Bowl. I mean, and since COVID's over and the conventions are starting up again, that's another whole revenue source.
Yeah, and also sporting events and concerts and everything today are much different than they were in the 70s and 80s with regard to pricing. If you think about, remember the way concert tickets and things used to be priced in the 70s and 80s? It was just a different, and even sporting events, were just priced differently. Now everything, not only the price is up, but there's so much VIP and like higher level things to price. It's just
Mhm.
so crazy. Whereas, I mean, in the 80s, a concert, I remember going to Van Halen at Madison Square Garden. You waited in line for tickets, at Madison
Yeah.
Square Garden, when they opened up. And I think you probably had like $15 seats, $18 seats, $30 seats. Like there were like three different seats, and obviously scalpers and people got it, but there was no such thing as buying a $500 seat or $1,000 VIP
Right.
experience. It's just like the seats the tickets just went on sale, and there were a couple of different prices, and that was it. But that's not the way events are now, which I think sort of leads to it, right? Because I guess you talk about the ADRs at a rate. So if someone's going to come and go to a sporting event or something, or a football game, and spend three, four, five, six, $700 a ticket, maybe 1,000 a ticket, well, then I guess they don't really care if they're dropping 500 or 800 or
Right.
900 on a hotel room, because if if two tickets to the Raiders game are 1,200 a ticket and they're
Right.
dropping
What's
2,400.
$400 for a hotel room or
Yeah,
500?
what's the hotel's only 800 a night. The hotel's only 1,000 a night. So that's different.
I don't know. And it seems like the younger generation has more disposable income than I know I had at their age. I mean, when I was there last year, over that EDC weekend, and chatting with some of these kids in the elevators that were telling me how much they paid just for the tickets to go to the event. And then there was a transportation charge, and then they weren't gamblers, they were paying for their hotel room. And I'm like, where are these people? I didn't have that kind of money when I was 19 years old, 18 years old. I don't know where they're getting the money, but obviously they are, and they're willing to spend it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's changed, but I mean, I think the whole idea of the whole like pleasure palaces and going to casinos to escape, why they were developed and going to escape, and why people feel comfortable gambling there. I think most of that is still accurate, and most of that is really still true, if you ask me. I mean,
Mhm.
I think it's still pretty true, even though it's changed quite a bit. So, is there anything, since we're going to wrap up very, very soon, is there anything else that really struck you, or that's on your mind, with the book, or, not with the book? I mean, I've got these great little Pellegrino drinks, which are, but is there anything else that
Not as good
really
as my
like,
Cabernet, but
well, I mean, and also, there's this whole growth of another sidebar is this whole growth, like this parallel growth of the suburbs with this whole idea of Las Vegas and casinos. Because remember this, there wasn't really this growth of the suburbs really happened in the 50s, and then you had the growth of Las Vegas, this whole Las Vegas idea happened then. I mean, you didn't really have suburbs before that, and you didn't really have the anything coming close to the concept of what Las Vegas is in our mind until like the 1950s. So is there anything else that you like that really strikes you, or
Hold on, I'm looking at my notes.
you took notes? God.
Just a little bit because I forgot. We talked about that. I guess it just what really struck me about reading the history and learning so much as I read these books is how amazing it is that Vegas survived. Through all of the mob, the mob's running Las Vegas, and it's all illegal activity, and they're stealing all your money, and recessions and all of these commissions and studies that were done, and trying to really bring down the whole gaming industry, and none of it worked. People love Las Vegas. I think it's way more than gambling, like we talked about before. And then I think about it today, and I'm like, okay, so everything shut down for COVID, and like the minute they opened the doors, people were going back, right?
Well, let's go to one other sidebar, which I think is very, very interesting. So obviously we have this huge bias and love of Las Vegas. I mean,
Yeah.
we get so excited, we love it. And a lot of people in our world, you would say our echo chamber, feels that way. But what's interesting to me is there's also this percentage of people who hate Las Vegas.
Oh yeah, I have.
You mention Las Vegas to them, and they're like, "This is my least favorite place to go in the world." What do you think that is? Like, why do you think? I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think it's actually not a really large percentage. I mean, I think actually a lot of people who aren't into Vegas as much as we are or our friends are still really like it, or find it, or say, or like it in smaller doses. But the people who like really hate Las Vegas, I always think that's so interesting to me, because it's like, how can you hate this? I mean,
That's
like,
one of my best friends. One of my very, very best friends feels that way. No desire to go there. Doesn't understand the appeal. Okay, she's not a gambler. She doesn't, her opinion of gambling is not that it's wrong or that people shouldn't be able to do it, but she's like, I could take that $500 or I could take that $1,000 and go buy a really nice purse. Why am I going to put it in a machine and have it be gone? Or why am I going to sit at a table for an hour and have it be gone? So that's how she feels about gambling. So obviously that, is a precursor to her not liking Las Vegas. But, I think people that don't like it, they focus on all the negatives. They focus on, the maybe unsavory characters you see on the street, or the homeless population. Not that you don't see that in New York City every day too. I think they just have a perception that it's just all about gambling and drinking, and not, I don't know, because she drinks.
And we could argue that squeaky clean suburban Xanadu, making these puritanical people feel really comfortable in this gambling environment, it was pretty squeaky clean in the 50s, say the Strip in the 50s and 60s. But once you get into the 70s and 80s, my opinion, I don't think it's so squeaky clean anymore. I mean, that's especially now, right? So this whole idea of maybe that's a great sidebar to go off on. This whole idea of like, is it really, it's not particularly squeaky clean. I mean, it's actually maybe the opposite of that. Hey, marketing for years, Vegas had that marketing, sort of, what happens in Vegas kind of thing. Though, I mean, that's different than, crime and other kinds of things.
Yeah.
So that's sort of interesting there too. I mean, it's all really interesting. I don't think there are any necessary, answers, but I think it's sort of the way it is. I think also maybe, and we see it a lot on social media, but I think in general in life, people like to have extreme positions about things, and maybe, I hate Vegas, but what do you like? Like, what do you really what do you like? I mean, that's like, what do you say to your like? You go to Vegas on vacation. What would you say to your friend? Well, where do you really like to go? Like, what do you like? Like, what makes you happy? Where do you go that would make you happy? And that's sort of interesting there too.
I think quickly, I think a lot of people, like when I think about my friends that don't like Vegas, typically when they've been to Vegas, it's been like on a conference, right? Or some kind of a convention. Okay, great. So you're eating cold chicken in a ballroom. You're not experiencing Las Vegas the way people like you and I and some of our friends do when you're there for work.
No, it's true. No, it's absolutely true. But no, it's cool. It's a fun conversation, and I hope you enjoyed the book. And this was
I
good.
did.
We'll have to figure out the next one, but we'll give it a little while. But it's always great to chat with you. So
I love
Michael and Marilyn just sort of talk about
it made
we're
me
sort of
read this
talking about the problems of the world.
it made me read this book. I never would have known of this book. I never would have picked this book up. And I really, I had a little hard time getting into it, but once I got in it, I really liked it.
Yeah,
This
it's
guy's
great.
obviously very smart. I really needed a dictionary while I read this book.
Also, the other thing that's interesting, going into the whole Zorkfest thing, what's fascinating to me, just on a different historical level, not anything to do with the thesis of suburban Xanadu, is this whole development of like Lake Tahoe. That whole, I
Yeah.
mean, Nevada again, but what they did at Lake Tahoe and how that sort of developed. And
Mhm.
I think that's like super, super interesting there. So and I think that's going to be something that we're probably going to go, talk about a little bit at Zorkfest. Maybe actually, that would be really smart. If I can figure out something to read that can pull Lake Tahoe into it. That
Oh,
could be interesting. Yeah, that'll be tough. Uh-oh. Does anyone have any suggestions? Well, no, because nobody joins us.
because that's in your bookcase. You have 1,000 books. There must be
Yeah,
one.
so that's something cool. Well, this is great. Well, thank you very much for uh thanks for joining me, and we'll take it from here. We're gonna have to I think we're gonna change the format where we're just going to handpick instead of making it a like if people want to read and show up. I think we're just gonna create a panel. It'll be like a
Oh,
it'll
that's a
be
good
like a
idea.
it'll be like a panel of like four people who are into it, and then we can come up with an idea, to talk about. And then if other people want to join, they can. But then at least we'll know we'll get a couple of people. But part of this was my fault because I changed the date. So I think that
Yeah,
was a little
life
a
happens.
little maybe I changed the date, but there still was a lot of time for the redo on the date. And then some people said that the other date wasn't good
I was going to say
anyway.
I wouldn't have made it if it was the other date. So you can't please everybody.
I know. Anyway, thanks so much for joining, and I'll see you soon in
See you in
Vegas,
Vegas.
actually.
Bye.
Bye.